Okay, so I welcome everybody to our Literature at Lunch. Today, I want to celebrate and remember some very, very powerful people that came out of our show. Of course, Dr. Wolfson, who I have the privilege of being a study partner with him for 3 years, will be honored Thursday night. I hope people will come. Also, I want to honor Tamar Gershberg, who was a brilliant woman teacher and loved the Hebrew word. She was a linguist. She really was a linguist, and she did a lot of writing for the Israeli Defense Forces, and she conducted the Hebrew school here, and she was a very strong influence on me when I was conducting the poetry seminars with the Jewish Historical Society. And of course, my parents, a blessed memory, who gave me the greatest education I could have, Maz, Columbia, 7 years at Columbia University, law school, and continuing education. So I wanted to dedicate it to them too.
Produced and directed a play down here at Stanford High.
I am aware of it. She shared a lot of her
days, as many it was put on for many times, and each time the city of Stanford or of every kind of person was there and enjoyed it. It was wonderful.
Yes, it's at the high school. I know she was involved with the high school. Okay, so let me just see who's entering here. Okay.
Really?
Okay, so what we are doing, welcome, Mike. Moshe, welcome. Gloria's here. Can you hear me, Mike? Let's see, Mike.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, good. Welcome. Well, I just dedicated this session to Tamar Gershberg, who was a brilliant linguist, wrote poetry. She wrote plays for the IDF, and she did plays that were performed at Stanford High School. Tamar Gershberg, my parents, amongst others. And my birthday is Thursday, so I'm kind of celebrating my birthday too. So
Mazal tov. Mazal tov.
It's great sharing it with you. And I just apologize today because I have so much I want to share with you that, and I know I will fall short. So I'm giving you advance warning that when it comes to Dante, and we will get to him very shortly. There was a great program that was produced on PBS. Did anybody see it? It aired starting April 13th. It was produced and written by Rick Burns, a famous documentarian who did the Civil War, and it's a great 4-hour production which covers the entire Divine Comedy. We will just cover a very short piece, and I'll give you a background, and I'll tell you why I think Dante's life is so significant, other than the fact he's probably the greatest writer in the Italian language, in the vernacular, not the Latin, the vernacular. It ties in with David, and I hope by the end of the session that we can discuss a little bit about David's life compared to Dante, because they both share so much in common. Okay, so let's start off in our Shmuel book. Okay, let me get to share screen for Moshe. All right.
Thank you, Richard.
Welcome. Let me just see if I can get it up here for you if I see it. All right. All right, share. All right, let's see if I could share a screen. All right, so Dante. Okay, a guide. Okay, here we go. Okay, so in our Samuel book, everybody should have a Samuel book near them or in front of them. Okay, you have my book here, I guess. Yeah, that's mine. You can welcome. It's on page 242. The blue marker is there. And the reason that I'm doing this, pardon my excursion, is because last week we spoke about necromancy and the fact that the reign of Saul was brought to an end because he dared thwart his own prohibition against necromancy, which got you stoning, by calling on a necromancer. And she brought up Samuel, and Samuel from the dead, which he was not supposed to do, tells Saul, your reign is over. That's it. You
Samuel
screwed up.
Told him that.
But
He already told him that way before when he was facing the Molech.
uh,
Because you didn't do it properly, it's over.
he
You're not gonna
basically
be the
was
king
told,
again.
yeah, he was told early, but here he's given, it's final, it's final. Yes, directly, this is final. Okay, so here we have a situation, we're in the second book of Samuel, and David has a conversation with a new prophet. The prophet's name is Nathan. Okay, now, of course, the question is, in the book of Samuel, how does Nathan fit in? Well, he fits in because that the rabbis say that the books of Nathan have been lost, that Nathan would have been another prophet. And so they get him in here in the book of Samuel. Okay, so let's start off with verse 7, chapter 7, verse number 1. Please start, Bruce. English or Hebrew? Go ahead.
English, because everyone understands that.
Okay, sure.
It happened after the king was settled into his home, and Hashem had given him respite from his enemies all around, that the king said to Nathan the prophet, "See now, I am dwelling in a house of cedar, while the ark of God dwells within the curtain."
Okay, now, first thing I want you to notice is that Yashav HaMelech, that the king was settled. That's very important because, as we know, David was being chased his whole life. He was being chased. He was being chased by Saul. And he feigned madness by going in with the priests at Noph. And then Saul came in, Saul killed 81 priests. That's another great sin of Saul, killing 81 priests, Kohanes, because they gave solace and they gave a home to David and hid him. Okay, so here the king is settled. That's King David. Okay, and he's safe. So that's a good time because that's when he's open to discussion with a higher authority. Now, the king said to the prophet Nathan, okay, all of a sudden Nathan, it's the first time Nathan is introduced in our Tanakh. And David says to him, look, I'm in a house of cedar, and we know the cedars of Lebanon are, they're strong, they're glorious, they're powerful, and the ark of the Lord abides in a tent. Okay, so David is saying, hey, Nathan, what about us being able to give a proper home to the tabernacle? It should not be a tent. It should be a home, okay, something that's more dignified than just a common tent, a tarp tent, or made out of various tree leaves, woven together, whatever. Okay. All right. Now, 2 more sentences here. Stuart, would you do number 3 and 4? And Mike, if you have any comments, don't hesitate.
Yes.
Yeah, don't hesitate. Okay, go
I
ahead.
will not.
Okay.
Nathan said to the king, "Whatever is in your heart, go and do, for Hashem is with you." It happened that night that the word of Hashem came to Nathan, saying, "Go and say to my servant, to David, thus said Hashem, will you build me a house for my dwelling?"
Oh, okay, stop. He asked a question. Now, what is going on here? David says it's time for me to build a proper tabernacle. And what does Nathan do? Anybody? He confirms it. Now, is that what a prophet is supposed to do?
No.
Prophet, he's supposed to get a vision. Prophets, we know, get visions from Hashem and in dreams. They
We
go.
don't need personal opinions.
Pardon?
We don't need personal opinions.
Yeah, well, this is a personal opinion. So this is a very, it's a slight of God. Okay, big mistake here. This Nathan character does not, as we can see right away, does not rise up to the level of
That's
Samuel.
why all his books were lost.
No, it looks very good. Okay. All right. All right. So we're up to number 5 and 6. Mike, do you have it there in front of you? You want to do 5?
Yes, I do. I'll read Hebrew.
Yeah, go ahead. Read the Hebrew.
לך ואמרת אל עבדי אל דוד, כה אמר אדוני, העתה תבנה לי בית לשבטי,
Okay, one more.
כי לא ישבתי בבית מיום העליתי את בני ישראל ממצרים ועד היום הזה, ואהיה מתהלק באוהל ובמשכן.
Okay,
From
ahead.
this, I think this is important. From the day that I brought the people of Israel out of Egypt to this day, I have not dwelt in a house, but have moved about in tent and tabernacle.
Okay,
Okay.
so what's implied here? I mean, what do you think is implied, if anything, by God saying, this is the way it's been?
Yes.
He's telling his prophet, look, hey, you're not the one to make decisions here. I think that's implied. First of all, you're not, I'm from the beginning, when we left Egypt, this is the way it's been, and I'm in charge. So I think that's implied here to a great degree. And then you had anything else that you want to say? You did 5 and 6, correct?
Yes.
Moshe, okay.
Yes.
Okay, and it's also, who implied possibly is David. Who are you? David, you've messed up a lot here. I've anointed you king, but have you really deserved it? Okay. So we go on to number 7 and 8. Who would like to volunteer? Go ahead, Gloria. Yeah.
Wherever I moved about among all the children of Israel, did I say a word to one of the leaders of Israel, whom I have appointed to shepherd my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedar? And now so shall you say to my servant, to David, thus said Hashem, master of legions, I have taken you from the sheepfold, from following the flocks, to become a ruler over my people, over Israel.
Okay, it's natural for you to do one more sentence. Good.
Okay? I was with you wherever you went. I cut down all your enemies before you, and I gave you great renown, like the renown of the great men of the world.
Okay, so, Gloria, God is doing what with David here? What's he doing to David? Is he giving him a straight answer? David wants to build a tabernacle. So what is God telling him? Does he answer him directly?
No.
He's indirectly. He's very indirect. And he tells him, look, I made you who you are. You were just a humble shepherd, humble shepherd. Samuel pulled you out from your shepherding, so to speak, and in front of your older brothers. And he said, you're the anointed one. So I have been behind you. I have your back, so to speak. Okay. And I want you to be ruler of my people. Okay. I've been with you wherever you've gone. I've cut down your enemies. And I will give you, this is very important, great renown. My translation is a little bit different because you guys have Art Scroll and Mike and I have Safari here. So, but the translations are very similar. He says, moreover, I will give you great renown like the greatest man on the earth. So God is saying, look, I'm not giving you a direct answer right now, but I have something even better in store for you, because from you will continue to come great people. I've taken it from Saul and I'm giving it to you, and your lineage will lead our nation in the future. Okay. Now we're up to,
Richard,
yes.
having that, separate place, that individuality gave them more than security. It,
You mean being the shepherd?
well, having a home, so to speak.
For the Mishkan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it elevates. It elevates we were nomadic people at this point. We were not in Jerusalem. We are somewhere in the Holy Land, and we're fighting against the Philistines. And at one point, the Philistines capture the tabernacle. They capture it.
It's a time when one is ready to focus.
Yeah, but now David said, I'm settled down now, God. I'm no longer running away from Saul, and I've got my marbles together. I'm ready to be your humble servant. Humility. Okay.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
So, one of them got at God's attributes has not been humbleness. I mean, right? God is not considered humble. I mean.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
you're treading in very,
I know,
and
but
difficult work. Go
the
ahead,
point
go
I'm
ahead.
getting to is it
Yeah.
sounds like what he's saying, is that he's never had the only way I can see this interpreted is either he's telling him to do it or not to do it, okay? If he's telling him not to do it with this, then he's being humble, because I've never asked for it, I don't need it, da-da-da. If he's not being, if he's just trying to be kind to him and tell him not to do it, then that's.
Very good point. From David's point of view,
He's telling him not to do it.
David is, as I understand what you're saying, is not humble.
Right.
David's saying, I should be the one that do it. I should be the one that builds the tabernacle. And he's talking to Nathan, and Nathan, sure, go ahead, yeah. My blessing. But
Right.
he should be speaking to God.
But I think, right, but I think God's saying, no.
Well,
He's not being humble, he's not saying
well,
So- That's how I see it.
I'd rather not talk, I'd rather
Okay.
talk about the point of view of
Okay.
David, that David,
Because he was king and everything had settled down, all his enemies weren't bothering him, so now it seems like that's the right time.
time to him to
God's
conversate.
saying,
Why
God's
did he
saying,
go?
I don't need it.
What?
Isn't God saying, I don't need it?
Well, he did. But the
yeah,
question is,
that's what
why
he's
did he think he
implying,
had it?
yeah.
That's what-
This is all implication. God is saying, look, who are you to question me? I've taken my people out and I've shepherded them, just like you've shepherded them, you know? So you listen to me, basically. First of all, Nathan's not listening to me, and you better have if you want my back, you better listen to me. I think that's what's going on here. It's really neat. Okay. All right, so let's go. We're up to 11. Who would like to volunteer? Anybody volunteer? 11, Miriam.
And then, you know, just-
Right, are we up to 11? Is that correct? 10? Okay. Yeah, okay, yeah. We're on 10, Moshe, yeah.
Yes. I will establish a
No,
home
no,
for
we have, yeah, I have someone else that I've appointed here, but,
Okay,
it'll
okay.
come back, okay. Miriam, is here and Miriam is going to do it, yeah, okay.
Miriam.
Miriam, yeah.
I shall yet establish a place for my people, for Israel. I shall plant it there, and it shall dwell in its place, so that it shall be disturbed no more. I don't know what this word.
Iniquitous
People will no longer afflict it as in early times.
Okay, one more.
Okay, and also from the day that I appointed judges over, am I in the right place? Judges?
Yeah.
Over my people Israel, and I shall give you respite from all your enemies. And, what? No. And Hashem informs you that, wait a minute, and Hashem informs you that Hashem will establish a dynasty for you.
Well, and I have a house for you, so that, different translations, dynasty. Yes, what you're saying is true, that God is saying, look, your line will be perpetuated forever, the line of Yishai. From them will come the eventual salvation, the redemption at the end of time. So that's true. But here God is saying, look, I will be the one to establish. I'm the one that is behind the Jewish people. And he says to me, I like this is kind of tongue in cheek a little bit. He says, I'm the one who appointed chieftains over my people. And he says, I'm the one that appointed judges as well. Okay. And we know what happened to the judges. I mean, there really wasn't a good judge in the book of Judges. There's only problems with judging. Okay. Okay. So God is assuring David, yes, there'll be a home for my people, and he hasn't denied it to him at this point. He just says, look, you've got your future, and your future is perpetuity of your family, okay? The Jewish line. You will establish the future redemption whenever I'm ready, whenever God, we hope it comes soon, but whenever God is ready, he will redeem us, okay? All right, so we're up to who's next that hasn't done?
Once just
Go around the table. So
table's going this way.
Yeah, but you started,
Right, then he did it,
Mm.
she did it. she
Yeah.
Yeah,
did it.
yeah, everybody did it, right? Helene,
I think it's Helene.
Helene, yeah.
Say, he's adopt.
Okay, so,
Page 245.
Oh, I'm on the right page, yes. Okay, and also, from the day that I appointed judges. This phrase is connected to the end of the previous verse, iniquitous people.
I think you're reading the commentaries.
Yeah,
We want to hear the text.
That was
Yeah.
loving on the commentary.
yeah.
No, those are the commentaries.
Reading the commentary, we're doing number, yeah,
Up from Egypt to this day, I have moved about in a tent and a tabernacle. Whenever I moved about among all the children of Israel.
No cigar.
What he said.
11.
11,
Love
or
it.
11, 11.
Yeah, that's right. You started from the right place.
And also.
Oh, and also, thank you. And
Okay.
also from the day that I appointed judges over my people Israel, and I shall give you respite from all your enemies. And Hashem informs you that Hashem will establish a dynasty for you.
Very good. Okay, so I basically jumped the gun. I kind of explained this in a way that God is behind it, and I will establish a house, and I think a home, a house. Okay, we have some little bit of feedback, Moshe, possibly. Okay, all right. One more sentence. The next one.
When your days are complete and you lie with your forefathers, I shall raise up after you your offspring, who will issue from your loins, and I shall make his kingdom firm.
Okay, so God is affirming the fact that David's reigning, David's kingship is assured for forever, basically. And this is what he's promising that you're going to get. Now we still have to get back to the house, okay? The house. So we're up to the next one is
13.
which one? 13?
We're on 13.
13. We're on 13. Okay, Moshe, we're on 13. Who's next? Okay.
I'm ready.
Alvin, go ahead. You're on stage.
Shall build a temple for my sake, and I shall make firm the throne of his kingdom forever.
Okay. All right. So go ahead. One more.
I shall be a father unto him, and he shall be a son unto me, so that when he sins, I will chastise him with the rod of men and with afflictions of human beings.
All right. So who will build this house in my name? That's the question, right? He will build. This is still God speaking. And he says, you have the kingship, but he will build the house. Okay. And I'll be father to him like and a son to me. I shall be a father, and he shall be a son to me. And if he gets off the beaten track, I will chastise him. I'll punish him with the rod of men and affliction of mortals. Okay. All right. Let's continue.
Is that gonna be David?
This can be Solomon. Solomon. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we're up to 15. Moshe, would you do 15?
But I shall never withdraw my favor from him as I withdrew it from Saul, whom I removed to make room for you.
Okay. One more.
Your house and your kingship shall ever be secure before you. Your throne shall be established forever.
Okay. So this is pretty dead. It's written in stone here. God says it's not basically you're going to have to make room for your son. Okay. Saul, I removed because he made many transgressions, as we know, especially with Amalek. And he also, in another chapter, performed sacrifices he wasn't supposed to do. And so Saul.
Psychological inappropriateness too. Chasing David all over the place.
Yeah,
Killing
yeah,
people.
chasing David, and killing 81 priests of Noph. So I made room for you, okay? And what he's saying, you're going to have to make room for your son, okay? And I'll be a father to your son, and he will be like a son to me, okay? And your throne, again, he assures David, your throne will be assured forever. So that's very important. And we finish up now with number 17, which I'll do. I mean, I'll take a turn. Okay. Kachol hadron ha'el, kachol hachizayon, hazeh ken diber nasan el David. According to these words, Nathan spoke in accordance with all these words, implied God, these are the words of God. Okay. Nathan is not speaking, he doesn't have free will at this point. He's just relating the fact that David will be secure in lineage, but his son will be the one to build the temple. Okay. All right. So I brought this in because I think this is a logical conclusion to the limits of prophecy. You're a prophet. You got to listen to God. You're a servant of God. You're a king. You're appointed. You got to listen to what God tells you. And David, as we know, as we will learn hopefully next time, Psalm 30, which will be after Shavuot. It looks like Wednesday, June 19th, which will be the week after the Festival of Weeks, that we'll get together and we'll do Psalm 30, which talks more about David's life and how David is fleeing here and there. And it gives you another term called not only Sheol, which we know means the netherworld, but another term called Shachas. So that will have to wait for the future. Now, I want to make a rather abrupt and deviant move to a fellow by the name of Dante Aligheri. Okay, everybody should have one of these sheets, which we're going to refer to here. This is from one of his three major works. Dante is known as the writer of the Divine Comedy. Okay, the Divine Comedy. He is born in Florence. How many of us have visited Florence? I've been there.
Yeah.
Beautiful city, beautiful city. He grew up in Florence, and it was a beautiful city. He grew up in the 13th century, 1265. He's born, dies in 1321. He comes from a very established family. His father is a merchant. He's a tradesman, and he's a moneylender. So we know he's very comfortable circumstances. He gets a private education, and he studies all the great Latin writers of antiquity, whether it's Cicero and Sappho. He studied all of the writers of poetry. David is a statesman too. Dante is known as a poet, a philosopher, and a statesman. In all three, he was a very devoted, loyal citizen of Florence. He wanted Florence to be a stable society, but it was not meant to be, because you had, very briefly here, but I do want to get into text here. We have about 20 minutes. Okay. You had a problem with the Pope. The Pope was in Rome. You have a seat of power, which was called the Holy Roman Empire, which covered a tremendous amount of territory, usually Austro-Hungarian Empire, and included Spain, and included Portugal. And you had two different seats of power. And of course, each one of these seats wanted to control Rome and wanted to control Italy. They were trying to expand their territory. And Dante was of the belief at first that the Pope in Rome should be the one to have whose laws we should follow. Okay, he didn't want an incursion from the north. Philip, one of the Philips, was the emperor divine. They believed in the divine right of kings. The Holy Roman Empire, they thought the kings came from Hashem, was line them up, and they were tied in with religion, and you had religion and politics which is probably the most venal form of rulership that you can possibly have. But this is what Dante grew up with. So he was first for the Pope, and then you had the Guelphs and the Ghibellines, and he was a Guelph. The Guelph was the Pope. The Ghibellines were for the Holy Roman Empire. And then there was he was an infantryman, and he fought against the battle of the Holy Roman Empire army, and he came out as a hero of sorts. So he is a brilliant student of poetry and history. He is an infantryman that gains fame, and then he comes back to Florence, and he thinks that the Guelphs, which was his group, were the ones that are going to rule, but it didn't turn out that way. It's very complicated. The Guelphs, which was his group, split into the white Guelphs and the black Guelphs. He was a whitey, and he didn't, at that point, he didn't want the Pope to be too strong. The black Guelphs overwhelmed the white Guelphs, and as a result, Dante had to flee. He became a pariah because he was too brilliant. He was too brilliant, too smart. He was one of the 6 mayors of Florence. They were called priors, and he rose to the highest level of civic leadership in Florence. That's how high he got, but only for a few months, because then the enemy, the black Guelphs, resented the white Guelphs getting power, and there was a fight, and they got rid of. They thought they told everybody, this guy Dante, there is a price on his head. He is not welcome back in Florence. If you can catch up with him, kill him. If he dares come back here, he owes us a heavy fine, and he owes us his head. So at that point, again, this is a long story, but if you see this on PBS, it's incredible. The Eric, the Burns production, it's a 4-hour production.
What is it called?
It's called Dante. It's called Dante.
Thank you.
PBS, if you put PBS Dante, it'll come up. So he is fleeing at this point, and he is on the road now. He's 45, 46, and he'll never come back to Florence. He dies. By the way, he did have a wife in Florence. He produced 3 children, and he left the wife because he had to get out for his life. His wife was from a very prominent, wealthy family, so they were protected by their wealth, but he had to flee. In his life, there are 2 major themes that run constantly. One is the theme of greed, envy, and
He always on the path, the quest for looking for God.
yes, he was on the path. If I may say so, he was a very strong believer in tikkun olam. He saw how corrupt Florence had become. He saw how money ruled. He saw how people, he was a righteous guy. He was, like Noah of his generation. He was very righteous, and he believed in doing things right. But obviously he had strong enemies, and they said, look, he is one of we got to get rid of this guy. We got to catch him, and decapitate him because he's only trouble. So he's on the road, and he seeks patronship from wealthy people that owned large castles. And for the next probably 10 years, he's on the road, and he begins writing this Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy consists of 3 books. We have an excerpt from the first book, which is called the Inferno, which is this is his concept of what the hell is, so to speak. He had this in his mind for a long time. He is a very unusual theologian. There was no one else that had this concept in the church. I mean, he was after Augustine, he was after Aquinas, and this was his way of, shall we say, looking at all of the evil that was created in his lifetime and putting people in their proper place in hell. There are 9 levels of hell here, starting with limbo at the top, lust, everybody can see that, gluttony, greed, anger, heresy, violence, and fraud, okay, and treachery. So while he's on the road, he has a chance of unloading his brain, because this had all been developing for many, many years, and he begins writing. He's a lonely man of faith, if you will, and he's holed up in these monastery type castles where he's given food and he's given a room, and he writes from memory. He doesn't have any books. He doesn't have a library. This is all from memory, and he composes 3 books over the next 10 years. We are going, and what he's doing is, in the Inferno, these are the sins of man, and there are very famous people in his time that he puts at various levels. And the way it's set up, it's like an inverted cone. Okay, it's a cone, basically. The largest number of people at the top, LImbo, largest number. These are people that were born before, that were never baptized, okay, in the Christian church. People that, like Virgil, Dante goes into the Inferno with a partner, a mentor called Virgil. Virgil was a great writer, like he wrote what's called the Aeneid. So he has somebody who accompanies him in these various levels, and he has conversations with people who have committed evil on these various levels. So this is a very brief introduction. I'm sorry, but I will pull the pieces together. I promise to compare Dante and David, and that's the reason I'm doing this. So, Michael, pardon?
Do we know anything about his early life?
We know that he was born into a very comfortable family. His father was a tradesman, a merchant, and a moneylender. He was given a private education, which is you can't beat that. He had tutors come in, taught him Latin. He was versed in all the famous writers, Cicero and Sappho and Plato and Aristotle. He had a traditional, and then he wrote poetry in Latin, like Milton. Milton was also a Latinist, if you will. And from there, he's writing poetry in Italian. At this point, that was a major step forward, because all the writers, poets, wrote in Latin. Now he is writing in the vernacular. This is a translation. It's from this book, which is a great book. Tremendous notes in this book. It's great. It's very clearly. So what I want to do now is just basically take you through to the second level. The first level is limbo, and the second level is called lust. Now, in the Christian, the 7 sins, lust is considered the least serious, So that's the reason you're at the top. You're at the top. There are more people in the limbo level than, for instance, there are in fraud. Fraud are the people that committed sins. They turned against their trusted mentors and advisors, and they were traitors. They were traitors to the cause, so to speak. So, and of course, we know that we discussed last time, incest is one of the gravest sins in the Torah.
But this is just lust.
This is lust.
Not incest.
But it does involve incest. Almost all the people that are covered here, look, lust, the rabbis argue about this too. They are, if you lust after a woman and you can't get her out of your head, I mean, you're in serious problems. You better go to your rabbi and find out what's going on. Martin?
Carter, President
Carter
talked about lust.
Lust, yeah. I mean, I've had some friends that they just going to get certain women that they worked around out of their minds. It would just, what do I do? They take showers. I mean, cool it, man. Just cool it. Not in your workplace, especially when you run the business. You can't do that, man. It's and look, the reason we have so many laws against incest in the Torah is because it was so common. People could not help themselves, and it's a major problem. It really was. And it's a major problem with these guys. And there wasn't hardly a pope in the Middle Ages that didn't have a mistress. Everybody knew that. These Medicis, they were screwing around.
The legitimate children that in the wall they put.
They made them into cardinals. Yes. Maybe put them into, yeah. So it's hard to talk about. Now, What we have is about 15 minutes here. Mike, I'm sorry you don't have this.
No, I don't, but I am listening carefully.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm going to do a fair amount of reading here because I do want to get my point across. Let's all start off. We're on Canto 5, the first page. And he says, thus I descended from the first circle down, which is limbo, to the second, which encloses the smallest space. You're getting, as you go down here, there are a lot of people in limbo, people born before Christ came and gave them an opportunity to get saved, etc. A lot of people there, okay? So he's descending to the second one, and he hears more suffering that it goads the souls to shriek. There's so much shrieking going on, even in the second. And he said, there stands Minos. Now, Minos was called the judge of the underworld. Okay, everybody can see it, fourth line. Minos bristling and snarling. He examines a soul's guilt at the entrance. He judges and passes sentence by how he raps, which basically means Minos was depicted as an animal, and he had a long tail, and looking at people, he determined how sinful they were, what level they should go into of the 9 levels by how many times his tail wrapped around his body. That's what he's talking about. Again, this is just Dante's theology. There's nobody else that follows this theology, as far as I know, in the church. But it's fantastic the way he deals with these forsaken souls that are here, okay? Let me just turn now to the third page. Just bear with me here, which is your page 91. 91, okay. All right, so just before this, Virgil, who's accompanying Dante to these various, and the reason he chooses Virgil, because Virgil wrote the Aeneid, and the Aeneid talks about Aeneas, who was around the time of the fall of Troy, and from Troy, he establishes Rome as the seat of Italian culture. So Dante has a leader who will rebuild. He's trying to rebuild Florence in the back of his mind by having a leader who built up Rome to where it was. And Rome was very strong at this point. So that's the reason Virgil's in here. So they go through various lovers here that committed adultery. And then they finally get to a pair called, and this is very famous, people that have read this, Paolo and Francesca. Now, Paolo and Francesca, I have you on page, okay, let me just go back here. I have you on page 91. Okay, we're on 91. And we're on the paragraph that begins, the second paragraph. And we have Dante speaking now, and he's accompanied with Virgil. And he says, poet, gladly would I speak with those two who to go together seem to be light upon the wind. So this introduces one of the famous adulterers of the time. Again, this is of Dante's time. They were called Paolo and Francesca. Francesca came from a very aristocratic family. She was a beautiful woman. And her father was one of the reigning nobles in the Tuscan kingdom. And Paolo comes from a rival noble family, also in Tuscany. And these families are, they're always fighting for land, and they have knights, and they're fighting. So in order to bring these two families together and to create shalom, bias, they propose a marriage between Francesca, who is the daughter of one of these nobles, with Paolo, who is the son of the other reigning nobleman. Okay, so Francesca is told that she will marry the second son of the opposing families in the opposing family. Now, this is arranged. It's an arranged marriage. She has no idea who she's getting, okay? And at the marriage, Paolo, who is the third son, is standing right behind the second son, who was supposed to be her husband. Now, the second son, they call him John, is deformed and crippled. And when Francesca sees him, obviously, she looks right behind him, and there's Paolo, and he's gorgeous. He's like an Adonis figure, Marlon Brando. And she thinks that the Paolo brother is the proxy. He's the proxy for the crippled one. And she thinks she's getting Paolo, okay? And they both look at each other and they kind of fall in love right there. It's like love at first sight. The marriage happens, and before you know it, Paolo is in bed with Francesca. The deformed brother finds out about it, and he comes knocking on the door, and he sees his brother with his wife. They were formerly married, and he takes out a knife and he slaughters both of them. So this is a very famous. It's a story that has been verified by medieval writers, enough so that it was well known to Dante as he was growing up in a society that had a lot of lust going on. There's a lot of this illicit love going on all around Dante. I mean, he was, and one of the things I should tell you, I know I'm going beyond myself. The two things he's famous for is Beatrice. Beatrice is this, you heard it, Beatrice is this 9-year-old lady that he falls in love with, like Romeo and Juliet. She's up on a balustrade, and he falls in love with her. He's 9, she's 9, and he can't get her out of his mind. And he marries into this very Donati family, a lot of wealth because it's expected of him, and produce children. And he was a civic, responsible man. He's a family man. So he has Beatrice. He always has Beatrice in his mind. He never can get her out of his mind. Beatrice dies at 24. We think out of childbirth, but again, Dante keeps referring to Beatrice in the Divine Comedy. She comes up very often in his mind because he was always loyal to her. But that's a major theme. If you can ever get into Dante, I'm glad Anne rings a bell with Anne, because again, Dante in his own way is full of lust for this. It never consummated. It was a platonic type relationship he had with this Beatrice, Beatrice, they call it Beatrice. She was like a saint for him. Okay. Okay, so let me just finish up here. So Dante is saying, I'd like to speak to them. And so Virgil, in the next one, in 76, says, Virgil said, you will see when they are closer to us, and then beg them by the love that drives them, and they will come. Okay, so we're not here yet. There are a lot of other people we have to see along the way. And they've seen Cleopatra, who committed adultery with Julius Caesar when she was married with Antony. There have been other people. If you want to read this in your leisure at home, you can see that this is all leading up to these few sentences. Okay. 79, as soon as the wind bends them toward me, I sent forth my voice. O wearied souls, come speak with us, if another does not forbid it. Dante senses that they're very important, these lovers. He sees how young and beautiful they are, and they're embracing each other. There's a lot of graphics on this in various Dante books, which I didn't want to bring for obvious reasons, because the lovers are entwined and here in this level of lust, okay? And then I'm going to skip a little bit. Okay, no, I won't. As doves called by their desire, with wings raised and steady come to their sweet nest, through the air, borne by their will, so did they emerge from the flock where Dido was coming to us. Dido was Virgil's lover, okay? And she commits suicide because Virgil is untrue to her. Okay, so first they have to get to Dido before they get to this couple. And then he has a deep felt cry. Now, this is Francesca. The woman speaks through this. She says, "O gracious and benign living creature, who through the black air go visiting us, who stained the world blood red. Why do you want to come to visit us? We're the worst sinners. We commit adultery. Yeah, I took this brother from the other brother, and then we got slashed. We're bloodstained here. If the king of the universe were friendly, we would pray to him for your peace. Prince, since you have pity on our twisted pain. So Dante is setting this up so he can give them solace. He feels bad for them. He can see how much love they have for each other. And, you know, like Richard II, you know, he's the most deformed Shakespeare character in history. You know, who wants Richard II? Okay. Richard III. Okay, Richard III. I stand correct. Okay. Of whatever it pleases you to hear and to speak, we will listen and speak to you while the wind is quiet for us as it is now. Tell us your story, he's saying. The cry where I was born sits the city where I was born sits beside the shore where the Po descends to have peace with us. That's where I was born, Francesca, by the Po. I come from a beautiful castle by the Po. Love, which is swiftly kindled in a noble heart, sees this one for the lovely person that was taken from me. Now she's talking about love as love as a person, amor. The Italians believed in amor, that's amore, whatever. But they believed in a mythical creature called Amor, and he had his bow and arrow, otherwise called Cupid. Okay, so you have this Cupid. It was Cupid that seized us. She's not taking responsibility. Okay, I'm not the one who did it. Okay? Love, which pardons no one, love from loving in return, seized me from his beauty. He's a gorgeous guy, and so love Amor put him in front of me so strongly that as you see it, it still does not. I'm stuck here in lust, and I still pine for him. I pine for him, and I can't have him because I am destroyed here. Okay, okay. Let me just finish up here. Page 193, line 115. This is Dante speaking. Then I turned back to him and spoke, and I began, Francesca, your sufferings make me sad and piteous to tears, but tell me in time of your sweet sides, by what and how did love, again, love, Cupid, grant you to know your dangerous desires? How did you give into, why didn't you establish reason to control your lust, okay? And she to me, there is no greater pain than to remember the happy time in wretchedness. And this your teacher knows. But if you have so much desire to know the first root of our love, I will do as one who weeps and speaks. Now she talks about, they were reading this book, okay? We were reading one day the pleasure, Lancelot. This is called Lancelot of the Lake. We all remember the King Arthur and his court. Lancelot is his favorite knight. And what does Lancelot do? Lancelot befriends Guinevere. Before you know it, he's getting along with Guinevere. So it's adultery, okay? So what she's saying here is basically, and I'll wind up with this, hey, it wasn't me. It was the snake. It was the snake in the Garden of Eden. The snake caused me to sin and bite into it. I'm not the one. So here she is saying, look, it's not me. It was Lancelot writing about how he was seduced by his friend, this in-between guy. His name was it starts with a G, but in any case, there was a go-between. It's the go-between. It was the shidduch guy that brought me together here. Okay, now I know I have rushed through this. I apologize that I've given such a short shrift to this guy because he is incredible. I urge you again to watch that Rick Burns. Just watch a little bit of it. It is so beautiful. The artwork, the professors from Yale, Harvard, Princeton, Cambridge, Oxford. This guy Rick Burns got them all together, and they're all talking about their favorite writer, Dante, and why and it ends up. You have the Inferno, which we're here. You have the purgatory, which is where the souls get cleansed, and then finally you have Paradiso, the paradise where they actually are welcomed in heaven, the Christian heaven. So Dante is traditional. He does believe in a Christian heaven, and he does believe in a hell, but this is his version of hell. Milton had his version of hell, and he is not a church great. He's not a church father like Augustine, like we studied with Herb Roseman. And remember Herb Roseman?
Yeah.
We studied Augustine, we studied Plato together, we studied Augustine and the Confessions of Augustine. Okay, he has his own version of hell, and then he has his own version of paradise. Okay, go ahead.
I don't get limbo.
Yeah.
I see an Israeli king standing there.
Yeah.
I assume it's an Israeli.
What you were seeing?
Limbo.
Yeah, you're in limbo. It says, yeah.
And I just don't get the whole scene.
Well, here it says, if I read very carefully, it says unbaptized
Yeah.
and virtuous pagans. Now, these people, they're stuck with grief from a lack of God's presence. And they never collected with the Christian God. They were born before Christ came into the world of Christianity. One of our people, that, and always be one of our people that became enshrined by his followers. But that's where they're stuck, okay? And there are a lot of people, Aristotle, Plato, all these people that Dante studied in order to become a great writer in Latin. He wrote Latin poetry. They are stuck, unfortunately, in this limbo. They'll never be able to enter into the Christian world because they never took the covenant. We have our covenant, they have their
The
covenant.
king doesn't seem like he's stuck. The figures on the right might be.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
But he.
I think that he's showing here that these are righteous people, but they're righteous before the arrival of the great kingship of from David, from Christ. I think he's showing that these people are decent people, except they were not blessed with being born into the common era. I think that's what he's showing. But I'll be glad to discuss limbo with you at another. Yeah, we use the word limbo where you're not quite sure where you belong. In a sense, they're not quite sure where they belong because in the scheme of things, they're at the top. But being at the top means you're excluded from being at the bottom. It's a paradox.
But the ones at the bottom are the worst.
Yeah, these are the worst. These are
At the
people
bottom.
that it's so hot down there. They are frozen
Oh, this is
in heat. I mean, if you read this, it's amazing stuff. They are literally frozen. If you watch the Rick Burns, he does take you down there, and there are depictions of people suffering. They're burning in frozen positions, if you can imagine that. That's how bad it is down there.
Connections. That's when someone is in limbo, they have no attachments, they have no connections,
Yeah, but
they have no purpose.
here is the king. This seems not to belong there whatsoever. There have been wars with the pillars thrown over.
I see,
There have
he's,
people on the right that are behind.
yeah,
The king seems to be the only upright one, the most advanced in my interpretation.
yeah. I'm glad you got into that. Moshe, we're talking about, as you can see here, limbo shows they were the righteous personages before the advent of Christ. So
Yes.
they could not get the Blessed Sacrament. They could not go to heaven or go to hell, but they are, because the second level is where you enter. That's the level that we're in lust. That's where you enter hell properly. Yeah, I mean, that's what Dante, again, this is Dante's construct. A brilliant writer. This is all from memory, and it's written in the Italian. The Italian's beautiful to read, and that's why he is read in almost every university. They teach a course in humanities. Yeah. You're welcome to take it home if you want. Yeah.
It seems like it's a really cruel irony that, for well over 2,000 years, certainly there had to be some very righteous, upright people, and no matter how righteous and upright you are, you're totally excluded from paradise because you weren't part of a religion that didn't even exist for so many centuries.
And it pains Dante enough that he gives them the top level. Now, why did I choose Dante as an opposite, if you will, to David? Okay. because as I see it, David was fleeing his whole life. David, for him to say, I'm finally settled, now I can build my sanctuary, it meant that he went through so much suffering and so much sinning. I mean, David was an abject sinner, but God anointed him as king even before he met Bathsheba. And by the way, Nathan is the one that comes to David and tells David later on in book 12 of 2 Samuel, you sinned with Bathsheba and you will suffer.
That's when he already was king.
Pardon? That's when he was king.
Right.
Yeah.
What did he do before he was king that you say he sinned so much?
This is when he was king.
Okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
okay,
You thought Shep
okay,
was a big.
Okay,
deal.
but the question is, what was the punishment that Nathan gave to David at that point? What was anybody? What's the
Are
punishment?
there 3 punishments to choose from?
The punishment is that the child born of the
Oh,
first
they
child
will
born
lose the child.
dies. Nathan tells it. Okay, so that's later on. But the second child, who's the second child?
Absalom.
Shlomo.
Solomon.
Yeah, Solomon is the second one. Yes. Solomon.
What?
He's
The one who died was,
successor.
I don't remember his name, Michal.
What?
The one who died was the first conception, the first time that he bedded Bathsheba, he produced this first boy. The boy died.
Mhm.
Second boy was Shlomo. God assures that Shlomo, even though Shlomo will sin, Nathan is telling him through God, he will be protected. Yeah, protected. Now, the reason, getting back here, that be able to write Psalms, 150 Psalms, and to be able to rule the nation, it means that you have suffered so much, and that the Psalms, what I call roadie, they're roadie poems. They're written, David's on the road. We don't know when he wrote them, but he's on the road. He's fleeing for his life. Just like Dante. Dante is fleeing for his life, and he's writing this incredible 10 years on the road. He doesn't even have a home. So a lot of scholars say that this was instead of his home. By writing this, he would do tikkun olam, so that Florence would reestablish itself as a prominent Florentine city. And it took many generations for Florence to achieve the greatness it's a great city. There's no doubt about it. It's a great city.
This was a great session, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, all I'm doing is trying. I know there's a lot that I presented here, and I try to connect the dots as much as I can. There are a lot of dots here.
Toda rabba, Richard.
Bakasha, Moshe, I hope that June 19th, we can get together.
Yes,
June
yes,
19th.
yes.
It's after
yes.
the festival of Shavuot, so we can get together.
Bye, and kol tuv.
Kol tov l'cha, gam kein. Refuah shlema. And Gloria's talking to you. Gloria, do you hear? No, he's left. I told him you were here. I did tell him. Yeah. Okay.